I started drawing a long time ago, and that's sort of where I found my footing, so to speak, and then I kept going and going. And charcoal is actually one of the mediums I get the best response with. People respond to it really well, and they love it. So you do art for yourself as well as other people, and when you're doing art for other people, when that kind of comes into play, it's huge about the response you get. And so my charcoal drawings have really gotten a good response, and I just keep going with them. And I've sold a lot of work that way, and it just seems to be going really good. But something that I've taken on in terms of making my drawings better is sculpture. And as soon as I started sculpting, I found that it not only improved my drawing, but I found this other love that I totally didn't know existed before. And so I've just really taken off with sculpture, charcoal drawings, and then I've recently started working on the computer a lot. And that's just video game stuff, kind of Photoshop, things like that, Maya, ZBrush. Same thing, drawing and sculpting, but different mediums, different kinds of execution. You go about it in a completely different way. I do lots of people's faces and bodies, and I love anatomy. So I find those are my biggest influences, is fantasy and then human anatomy. I love human anatomy. The fact that I have it right here in my hand, and I do drawings of hands, and I just have all the reference I need, and it's all, every single thing I learn about the bones and stuff, it's all within me. I'm not learning about knowledge of somewhere else or something. It's all personal, and it's all something I can pull out of my brain and then create again for somebody else. So right now in my life, I'm finding I'm just practicing as many things as I can, which some people have advised me against, but I'm okay with that. I like hopping around. I get bored easily, so changing it up is always fresh, and I always have something else to go to. When I'm sick of charcoal, I go to sculpture. When I'm sick of sculpture, I go to drawing. And when I'm sick of drawing, I go and model on the computer. And when I'm sick of all that, I can go film a music video and dance, and it's fantastic.
Well, I work a lot with wire, basically 16 gauge annealed rebar wire, which is what they use when they're making concrete and tying up the forms and whatnot. And I kind of stuck with the wire. I started exploring it as sort of a spontaneous impulse many years ago, and I started working with clothes hangers actually first, and then realized that they were a little bit short and hard to work with, so I got some of this wire from the hardware store and started making little figures. And at the time it was around Christmas, so Christmas decorations and whatnot, and people really responded well. They thought it was an interesting idea and a unique medium, and so I just kept working with it, and the pieces got bigger and bigger and more complex over time. And I sort of stuck with it because it was unique and a little bit different than the standard, paintings and sculptures that you see around. So the more I work with that medium, the more I realize that there's more potential and different ways of doing things, and more possibilities of other pieces, and the pieces themselves have grown in size. So I went from making some very small sculptures to now quite enormous pieces. And each piece opens up another branch to explore. Sometimes it's just the little sculptures, 3D, or like a drawing on the wall that sort of hangs flat but still has a three-dimensional quality. And I've also done a lot of work with lanterns, using the wire to draw in the three-dimensional shape, and then kind of coloring it in with the tissue paper. So that's like the piece behind me here. That's a bigger version of some smaller pieces, just the culmination of many years of work and the evolution of certain techniques to make it all hang together, kind of thing. My inspiration comes from life, in a way. There's so many different things one can use as an inspiration for art. Sometimes it's just decoration, where you want to make something that looks nice, perhaps pieces of like flowers or fish or animals, these types of things that have a lot of sort of just decorative value. And then there's other times where perhaps I'm trying to make some kind of a statement about the world. In that case, the focus is more about trying to get some kind of message across. Although really, ultimately, it's about having fun for me and enjoying the process of the creative process itself. Sometimes I'll start off with a certain idea, and then the piece itself will evolve in a direction which I hadn't really anticipated, and I'll end up with something that's new to me also, as well as everybody else. Become focused on their own creative path. I never went to art school or did any kind of art training. My own process has been very much sort of self-determined or just sort of inner-directed, you know, following my own creative impulses and just seeing where they ended up. So I would encourage people to follow their creative impulses whenever it's possible. This is something that I've found very enriching in my life, and I think that sometimes perhaps we can get too caught up in whether what we're going to create or even the anticipation of making a piece of art there's a lot of pressure as to whether it'll be any good or whether people will understand it or whether our own creative abilities match what we see in our mind. You know, sometimes you have this great idea, but in actual, you know, to come and create it, it doesn't always work out the way we want. And like I say, trying to let go of those expectations and just to sort of make something and be more enjoying of the process and just to sort of let it happen.